Next time we'll be talking about Christ's parables and Christ's view of the view of work directly from Christ himself. And we'll talk more about that because we're talking about slavery. But who has a question? Next time we'll talk about that. Yes?
Somewhat related. Maybe not exactly. He that does not work will not eat. Could you just expound
Sure.
on what just your
Right, sure.
what you think the Bible is saying?
Be glad to talk about that. Sure. The question was, what about the verse, if a man won't work, he shouldn't eat? First of all, we can kind of ignore it because it's in the Old Testament. Oh, wait a second. No, I think it's in the New. Now we got to take it a little more seriously. It's in the real Bible. What a mess. I had a person tell me one time, no, this is the New Testament. They quoted to me, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. I was like, okay, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. Where did he say vengeance is mine? It took him a little while. Oh, he said in the Old Testament. Okay. Vengeance is mine in the Old Testament and the New Testament. I mean, that was like a weird conversation. Anyway, back to this. Every person living is either going to be like or tend towards the virtuous woman, or they'll be tending towards those guys in the beginning that are plundering their neighbors. The plunderers make the world worse. The workers, the people that make work for profit, make the world better. And just briefly there, entrepreneurs, people who start businesses, make the world better just by starting a business because they give you and I more choices. We've talked about this before. Wealth doesn't have to do with all kinds of money. Robinson Crusoe, we've talked about him, right? He didn't even care about the coins on the ship. It didn't matter to him. He wanted other things. He didn't have choices. Wealth is choices. And yes, it's the fun to make those choices, but entrepreneurs, people who start businesses, make us more wealthy because they give us more choices. And they make our lives better. Now let's talk about a man who doesn't work shouldn't eat. Let's talk about what Paul's saying here. Let's not sugarcoat it. Paul is saying very clearly, if a guy won't work, do not help him. Do not feed him. Do not assuage your own little conscience because you want to feel better, like you're doing some good, and give him something to eat. You're not helping him. Here's what's going to happen. Proverbs says, his hungry mouth will drive him on. You know what's going to happen to that guy? You think he's just going to starve to death? No, the man's going to finally get a job, if he's even allowed to get a job anymore, with Social Security and minimum wage and all the nonsense they put in front of people. That man, if we do not feed him, will ultimately become a person who will help his neighbor. But as long as he's not working, he's not helping anybody. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we could apply God's law and turn all the people who are, shall we say, on the receiving end without contributing, into contributors? There'd be wealth. The wealth would be crazy. You wouldn't be able to figure it out, all the wealth. So yes, I apply that verse. If a man won't work, let him starve. And he wants to starve to death, it's on him. That is merciful, and that is loving. Yes?
The Bible also has lots of blessings for people who feed the poor, and cursings for people who don't provide for the poor and the hungry.
Right.
So you see some guy on the street, and you're like, is he hungry or is he not working? Either way, it's a blessing or a cursing situation. It's not just, well, if he was really hungry, he'd figure it out. Because the Bible says there are people who are hungry and we're supposed to feed them.
Right, and the way we're supposed to do it is the Bible's way. Which the Bible never ever has us hand out food stamps, cash. And of course the example here is Ruth, right? Came back extremely poor from the land of Moab. But Boaz was a godly man, and did not cut the corners of his fields and didn't go over his field the second time. So that's how Ruth could support her family. And you know, we are missing something big here about this. Because what happened in that case, that was God's law working the way it should. And Boaz saw someone who wanted to work hard. Now you think about a country like that, a setting like that. You're a wealthy Boaz, you have lots of fields, you need people to work. Isn't that the difference between the poor and the wealthy, right? The wealthy have goods, but not much time. The poor have time, but not much goods. That's why they clean the four corners of the field. Now, if you're trying to hire people and you're Boaz, he did just what any businessman would. Hey, look at that person out there gleaning. That's a hard worker. I'm going to hire her. You know, God's ways, if we'll do His ways, the people who want to work will get jobs. They just flat out will. And they have. And somebody said, well, a lot of people can't find work. Well, you know, with all the impediments, come on. You want to start a business today, you might fill a paper this thick. I mean, all the impediments to hiring people. I just read very recently, entrepreneurs cutting way down in this country. Do you blame them? All the stuff they got to do just because they want to help their neighbor. And I'll tell you something like myself. I've known entrepreneurs. I've known wealthy Christians. The ones I've known are very generous. Right.
What about like orphans and widows, for example, where people that can't work for money?
Sure. We have the case that where David, for example, Saul's grandson, Mephibosheth, lame in his feet. And David had him come and sit at his table. And David used his own goods. He didn't throw a tax on everybody to support Mephibosheth. He used his own goods to support him. And honestly, there are people that can't work. But if we would just leave the entrepreneurs alone, if we would just leave the business guys alone, just leave them alone, they'll take care of those folks like they used to between profitable businessmen, the church, and families. There were times when those people were taken care of. And I would argue those people are taken care of less with all the taxation going on today. They're being taken care of far more poorly. I mean, it's not well known. I don't know why the media isn't talking about it, but remember Hurricane, what was it? Sandy that devastated Jersey? You know there's still people living in tents, right? Oh, we have the government. It's going to take care of everybody. They're still in tents. I tell you one thing right now, if we would let godly businessmen alone and churches alone, they'd have had those people in houses last year. Criminals. Yes.
That's a complicated question, but if you have a man who's not willing to work and he has a family, would you consider his wife and his children orphans and a widow because he's not providing? Like, how would you address a situation like that?
Okay, so he's not working, and now his family is still. That's the toughest one of all. Years ago, I was involved in a church where the husband he's on drugs, 4 kids, and it was very tough. We didn't want to give him money, so we gave him groceries. And of course, then he was selling the groceries to get money for drugs, of course. So it was extremely difficult. I would like to see a man like that brought up on charges of abandoning his family. I say, look, one of two things is going to happen. Either you're going to be a slave to somebody, or we are going to put you out of yours and your family's misery. So wait a minute, Joel, wait a minute, capital offense? Well, what's happening to those kids? What's happening to them? Again, I would say this. A godly family, godly church, orphanage, whatever, takes those kids away. I'm kidding about the capital offense. We're not going to go there. For that. But takes them all away, provides for them, and you can have your drug problem on your own, whatever you want to do, die. if you went to. Doesn't that sound like not merciful at all, doesn't it? But he's already making decisions for death every day.
Yeah.
He's choosing to die. I don't know how to help someone like that. I honestly don't. I remember reading years ago a testimony of a guy who said he was homeless. He said, I get up, I get drunk, I drink all day, and that's all I care about. I only care about drinking. Good. Go out and help him. You're not going to do it. You know, why can't we get a little bit of a hard, if we really care about our neighbor, let's look at it the way it really is. He's making decisions to kill himself. All we would say is, you can kill yourself, you just don't kill your family, if we can help. Tough stuff, yes.
Minimum wage laws that hinder work ethic and
Minimum wage laws,
child labor.
child labor, talk about that at some point. That's controversial, and we would need some time to talk about that. How about time and a half for overtime mandated by the state? What if I want to work extra for my boss? You know what? My boss might say, you know what? You're worth it to work regular time. That's worth it to me, but I can't pay you time and a half. I just got the privilege of making my own deal with my boss taken away from me. I can't do it now. That kind of stuff is ungodly. We would never have, one of the things that made it, where people learned trades was the old apprenticeship program. Try the apprenticeship program with minimum wage. It's kind of hard to do. Charlie.
There's a community pantry near where I live in Lansdale, and the church will every once in a while announce that the pantry has a certain need for certain goods. Now, I'm not involved with that ministry at all, so I don't know any of the recipients. I don't know whether they're lazy, or I don't know whether they're just having a hard time. So, like, how do you relate if I'm not going to be involved intimately in that ministry, in giving food to that
Sure.
ministry? Is it like, on the one hand, I want to, on the other hand,
Sure.
is it going to?
Right, what's happening?
Yeah, what's
Yeah.
going on?
Do you know the people running it?
A little bit, but not a lot.
Okay, I would not give anything until you knew the people running it. I knew a man in locally, somewhat locally, and he was a tough guy. He worked with a Christian organization, and my mother asked him one time, how do you know who has needs and who doesn't? You know what he said? He said, I walk right in the house, and I open the refrigerator, and I see what's in there. He was a man who was really serious. That's a man who's serious about helping people. Yes.
We went and toured the Hope Rescue Mission down in Reading, and after we did that tour, we were just completely amazed by how they had systematically have given homeless people and people with addiction problems a way out. If you want it, you can have it. I mean, if you're homeless in this nation, you can get out of homelessness if you want it. And the Hope Rescue Mission, after just taking a tour of the facility and talking to the directors and the head honchos there, that this is a really great ministry to give to, or to work with, or volunteer time, or give tithe, or whatever too.
Yeah, that Hope Rescue Mission in Reading's been around. I was there when I was a teenager. In fact, those were my first preaching opportunities at the Hope Rescue Mission. Those poor guys. The deal was really a pretty simple deal. You had to listen to a gospel presentation or preach, and then you got supper and a bed for the night. And I don't know what they were thinking when I was up there. I don't know if it's worth it or not. I think I'd rather be out the street. But those. Think about all, even still, with the state plundering our paychecks to the degree that they do. Still think of all the charity work that's still going on. The Christians are doing in spite of the attack on our productivity. It's kind of amazing. Good questions. Yes, Ken.
The idea today, I'm seeing people thinking of charity in terms of the government know, putting a gun to somebody's head and doing somebody else, they feel good about themselves, that they've done something to provide for their neighbor. It's not real charity. Real
No.
charity is voluntary
Absolutely.
and it's private. It's not involved with the government. The government isn't in business to be compassionate on people necessarily, right?
Right. Yeah, the government has got into the provision business and got out of the protection business. And we all notice the more they're into the provision business, the less they're in the protection business. You all remember good King Wenceslas, right? He looked out on the feast of Stephen. The snow was thick. Why was good King Wenceslas a good king? Remember, he saw a very poor man, right? The song? Hither page and stand by me if you know it telling, yonder peasant who is he, where and what is dwelling? Sire, he lives a good pace hence, underneath the mountain, up against the forest fence, by St. Agnes fountain. Bring me corn and bring me wine. And the way that it goes, if you remember that, good King Wenceslas and his page, they go out themselves and minister to that poor man. That's why he's good king. Bad king raises a new tax and says, we need to take care of the poor. What you mean we? Yes,
The poor man in that story was picking up sticks.
he was working. He was working. Indeed he was, thank you. Forgot about that. He was working. Good questions. Who else has another question? All right, thank you very much for your patience tonight. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope you get a chance to see some of those books. And if you think of it, got a basket over there too. But
Yeah, we have a mess.
we're just glad you came.
Yeah.